Presentation of the Global Fair 2020. We're glad to have you, and we just like to let attendees come in as we start the webinar. So I'll just give it a couple minutes as people filter in. We found that lunchtime is a good webinar time, so feel free to grab your lunch as you're listening to. Just a reminder, this is a webinar format, so you'll see on the bottom there's a Q&A option. If you have questions while the presenters are talking or afterwards, you can type your questions in the Q&A and one of our moderators will call those questions out to the panelists. Attendees are muted with your video off, but you will be able to see the directors who are on the call. And then we'll be recording and posting this to YouTube as we have for our other presentations as well. So it's about 12:01 and I will dive in to get started. So as a reminder, this is the last of our regional sessions. This has been a really interesting endeavor in hosting a virtual global fair. If you missed anything or you want to go back and watch videos, you can find the links to the YouTube live recordings at Plus Global Fair 2020. So you can use that not only as your resource for what's happening next, which there's a couple more presentations happening today, but you can find links to the previous presentations there as well. If this is your first time coming to any global fair event, we're glad you're here and we're glad you're getting started. The best place to get started is Plus Off-Campus IQP, where you can find all the details about how to apply. So another link to make sure that you bookmark. And then finally, eProjects is where you're going to find all the details about all of the programs that we'll talk about, as well as short videos that each of the directors have made. And that's also where you'll start your application. So those are just my reminders. I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment so that you can see who's in the room. Today we have our Africa and Middle East Project Center directors, and representing our Cape Town, South Africa Project Center, we have Professor Batan Samase. Thanks for being here. Professor Issa Baran of the Eilat Israel Project Center, IQP. Professor Rob Kruger, representing the Kyebi, Ghana Project Center. Professors Mohammed Al-Hamzoui and Rebecca Moody, representing Rabat, Morocco. They just happen to be in the same room. And for Namibia, our Windhoek Namibia Project Center, Professor Joe Doran will be here in just a few minutes. So without further ado, I will reshare my slides and we'll get started with our first project center, which is Cape Town. Professor Samase, take it away.
Thank you so much, Erin, and welcome to all our attendees. Welcome to all the students who are interested in these project centers. I'm going to talk about Cape Town, which is located in South Africa. It's between the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. It's known for Table Mountain, but the city ran all the way to the Cape of Good Hope as well. Now, if you hear the word Cape Town, what words usually come to mind? You probably think about, world-class city, tourist destination, great eating, good food and good hiking, maybe safaris if you go down a little further, food and music. Yes, Cape Town, you probably know, is a very cosmopolitan city with visitors from around the world. But however, as you get out of the airport, you will realize that it still paints a picture of two starkly different worlds, right? Because it continues the struggle with the legacy of apartheid, which perpetuates significant social, economic, political inequities, and along the racial lines. And those are themes that are very current, especially as we look at the United States today and the recent event and social protests. We can relate to that. And so South Africa and Cape Town particularly is a place where we have that, and we have the opportunity to experience and compare the UX experience to what's happening in Cape Town. And since 2007, the Cape Town has been working there with projects that try to provide opportunities to those who didn't have enough skin in the game before. So particularly past projects has worked on sustainability, looking at water and sanitation, urban planning and mapping, from the ghettos to other settlements. We've been working with youth and early childhood development as well through education. And energy and stormwater management has also been a theme in the past. And more recently, we've been working with micro entrepreneurship, working with women to provide opportunities, particularly enabling and empowering smaller groups of people who lack opportunities. There have also been projects in multimedia communication, even sport and recreation, and work around different communities there. So one of the interesting things in Cape Town that we try to do is that you will get to, when you get there, you will get to work with people that have different experience than you, so you can get to share your experience, to compare your experience, to learn from those we work with. In particular, we don't call them really beneficiary, or we don't go there to save them or to help them necessarily, because we have this concept in Cape Town that we call co-researcher, and we call our sponsor, we like to call them partners, right? So we don't usually use the word sponsor, and we don't use the word beneficiary, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is co-created with those we're working with. So our beneficiaries are usually part of our research team, so we call them co-researchers, and they're part of framing the problem, but also providing us with initial answers, and then our students also contribute with their knowledge of engineering. And so this is the perfect place to have bringing your engineering skill, your critical thinking skill, and problem solving skill together to solve human need, because the human need and difficulties are right there. Team that we look at, for example, are sustainability, vulnerability, resilience, social justice, and opportunities in general. So we're now looking at particularly a group of students. We give the chance to all students who are interested. All we really ask from our applicants is a genuine interest in exploring new avenue of learning, to exploring different problems that they may have never grappled with, and also meeting new people and being very open-minded and be happy to contribute to something that is bigger than themselves. So that's what I want to say about the Cape Town project so far.
Thank you so much. We'll go on to Israel.
Hello, welcome. Greetings from Israel, where it is warm. And the Eilat Project Center is at the southernmost tip of Israel. And the topics, or the focus in 3 words is sun, rocks, and high tech. Eilat has a lot of sun, and in C term, that's very nice. In C, which is when the project center is in session, that the temperatures are between in the 70s and 80s. It is a desert climate in the south of Israel, which means yearly rainfall is about 1.2 inch. That's for the whole year, not for an hour. And so there's very little rainfall. water scarcity. The ground is very poor, but there's lots of sun. And that instructs our projects. So our projects are in solar energy. The area where we are going to be is currently producing 70% of the energy they're using from solar sources, and their goal is to move towards 100%. So you can see some of the solar fields from the area in the picture, and that's one of the topics we're working on. The other sets of topics have to do with desert agriculture. There's a lot of high tech being used in agriculture to make basically the desert bloom. So for instance, these palm trees, which actually take up a lot of water, but they use brackish water, are one of the sources of income for the region. And that area of Israel is providing a significant portion of the global market in high-end dates. High-end is like big, plump, juicy dates. And once you'll have a date there, you'll never be able to have a date anywhere else. So well, there are other agriculture projects that are being investigated, and that's another area that we are working in. Lastly, not the last, but an additional area has to do with the city of Eilat. The city of Eilat that you see on the bottom here sits between the desert, or at the edge of the desert, and on the coast of the Red Sea. And it also, in the Red Sea, in that area, there is a reef that's still in very good condition. And the surrounding as well as the climate make this a tourist attraction. Eilat has about 65,000 inhabitants and has about 3 million visitors a year. So it's a very high percentage of visitors. And for what it means for the city is that they have to be forward-looking and they have to plan to make sure that all these tourists have a good time and will have a good time, and that the whole thing works smoothly. And so we have been working with the city of Eilat, and we'll be working with the city of Eilat on smart city projects, which are planning, looking at, say, sustainability issues. Sustainability is a big topic, obviously, because of the harsh conditions that this area is under. It's one of the harshest climates on Earth. In the summer, it can easily be above 100 for about 2 to 3 months. So toasty. You will be living, or we are living, in small communities in the desert. They are depicted, I can't point at them, but they are depicted on the bottom right. These are kibbutz communities. I don't know how much you know about kibbutzim, but they are communal living arrangements where each person, they're very democratic. So they have every member of the kibbutz has input. They do a lot of things together. Community is an important parameter in their ways of living, and you will have the opportunity to experience that. You'll be part of that community. In the desert, about half an hour from Eilat, about 2.5 hours from the center of the country, where it looks totally different. It looks Tel Aviv. It's about 3 hours from the kibbutzim, and that's a modern beach city, high-tech financial center. So big difference. At the kibbutz, there is an environmental institute, and they have students from all over the world. They also have students from the neighboring countries, specifically from Jordan and from and Palestinians. And I expect that with the new treaties that were just signed yesterday, there will also start to be people from the United Arab Emirates and potentially from Bahrain. So it's a great opportunity to meet all these people, and there are activities that promote interactions with these visitors. Lastly, you can't talk about Israel without looking at the historic aspects. And when we say high tech, Israel is a high tech hub nowadays. It's called Startup Nation because there are so many startups. But it was a high tech hub historically. Some of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on Earth are in Israel. Jaffa is one of them. Acre is another one. They had technology for that time. There's a lot of archaeology, and we'll get to see those. We'll also visit some of Herod's, or some of the excavations of Herod's palaces and Herod's building projects. We'll visit the Dead Sea, and we'll, of course, be in Tel Aviv. I'll be happy to answer any further questions. If there should be any, just you have my email under my name here, so feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And now we'll go on to Ghana.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the, I guess it's MENA and Sub-Saharan Africa info session. My name is Rob Kruger, and I'm the director of the Ghana Project Center, actually in what we call the Development Design Lab in Ghana. And like Baton was saying about South Africa, we first approach our projects as humble facilitators. We're not going there to save anybody. We're not going there to, offer our technological expertise and prowess to them. We're there to co-produce solutions that are meaningful for the communities that they take place in. So we'll learn with and from the Ghanaian people on how to solve local problems, especially those related to the environment. We work around artisanal or small scale gold mining infrastructure. Last year we built 2 bridges, literally designed and built 2 bridges. The image behind me is the student team working with a team of local craftsmen to design the bridge, which again, they later built. We work on projects around education, developing educational materials for local schools and around livelihoods. We don't consider our projects complete unless we can help create economic opportunity locally and regionally for the people who participate. Another really interesting part of this is the technological innovation in real time. We are there innovating. We are there innovating with traditional knowledge of our hosts, of our co-designers, as well as what we bring to the table. And really, there's a positive impact. Like, again, we built a bridge. We prevented a parking lot from in front of the health center from flooding during the rainy season. And the problem here is that elderly people were walking across 2x4s to get to to get to the front of the health center. In addition to that, it was a ripe area for mosquitoes to breed and thrive. So you go to the health clinic and you come back with malaria. That's not good. And then you'll also have an opportunity to be a fellow in the Development Design Lab, something that you can put on your resume, and an opportunity to publish your project's results and your experiences in our journal Chronicles. And finally, you'll have a chance to travel to some of Ghana's most beautiful regions. We'll go to the eastern region to Butterfly and Monkey Sanctuary. We go to the northern region where we are on the savannah, and we get to see elephants and baboons and all sorts of deer species. And then we go down to Cape Coast. A trip to Ghana wouldn't be complete unless you bear witness to the tragic history of slavery there. There's two castles, Elmina Castle and Cape Coast Castle, where literally hundreds of thousands of people from the region found their way across the Atlantic to Latin America, to the US, to the Caribbean as slaves. So we go and visit those types of things. Most people speak English. We'll learn some Twi, which is the primary local language in Ghana in our pre-QP. And I'll leave it at that and hope you have some good questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And Morocco.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohammed Hamzawi, and this is Rebecca Moody.
Hi.
We're both from the Humanities Department. So I'm going to talk about the Morocco Project Center, which houses both IQP and HUA. So it's located in Rabat, which is the political capital of Morocco, Morocco is in North Africa. So it's the tip of Africa, in the north towards Europe, and at the same time, it's the western part, or the most western part of the Arab world. So there's this mashup of cultures there. If you look at the the history of Morocco, there is we have the indigenous people, the Amazigh, we have the the Romans, the Visigoths, the Byzantines, all made it to Morocco, and then we had the Jews, the Arabs, and then the French and the Spanish colonialism. So there's all this kind of like melting pot of cultures and languages too. And Moroccans are very, proud of that heritage. So you'll be living in Rabat, the capital, like I said, in a dorm with other students, WPI students and other international students who come there either to learn Arabic or do other types of projects across from the biggest mall, literally the biggest mall in Rabat. And in terms of the projects, we work with diverse sponsors or partners. So I can talk about some of the examples from last year. We worked with an organization that is heavily involved in sustainability and environmental activism. And they were looking into students helping them to work with basically figuring out different resources or types of energy, because there is a lot of waste of wood in Morocco, because we have around 12,000 hammams, which are really traditional bath houses. And there is a lot of waste of energy and water. So we worked with them to basically find alternative ways of heating the water, alternative ways of distributing the water. And that's just one type of, the project that you can do in Morocco. We also worked with a woman who basically opened her home and turned it into this, this home or housing, like a place for people who come to Rabat to get treatment for cancer. We're talking about people who come from very rural areas, and they can't find, they're either poor or can't afford housing, so end up staying there. And the organization relies on charitable, donations. So the students help them figure out a campaign, basically marketing, and as simple as creating paragraphs and posting things on Facebook. And that created a big impact, because we were helping locals basically reach locals and other organizations around Morocco to basically provide them with a sustainable source of of help and support. So these are all the types of projects that we did in Morocco. And if you have questions, please reach out to me or Professor Moody.
And you're not finished with us yet, because
No.
now I'm going to talk about another way that you can go to Morocco. So as Professor Mzawi mentioned, we run both an IQP project center and an HUA project center out of Rabat, Morocco. What is an HUA project center? So glad I asked. You can actually finish your HUA requirement, or you can finish a minor in HUA. What does that mean? You need to have taken at least 3 courses before you go, which means that you can either take 3 HUA courses here on campus, or you can transfer in any AP credit or outside credits that you have. We don't consider depth and breadth as seriously at the HUA project centers as we would an on-campus HUA requirement. So if you've completed any of those 3 courses, you go with us during D term of the 21-22 academic year. And complete the second half of your HUA requirement by completing 3 courses in Morocco, or if you've already completed your HUA requirement, you take the 3 additional courses necessary to complete a minor. So last year, for example, when we were in Morocco, I had 6 students study with me to complete their HUA requirement, and an additional 3 students who were there to complete their minor in Arabic. So there are a lot of options available to you. We go at the same time as the IQP students, so you'll be living with a diverse group of WPI students. And as Professor Mzawi said, we also live in a dorm with other students from around the world, so you have an opportunity to meet a lot of other people. And while you're there as part of the HUA Project Center, you will have the opportunity to put together your own individual research project, either your inquiry seminar for your HUA requirement, or your humanities capstone requirement for your minor. This is influenced by you. This is determined by you. What are you really interested in? Is it something that is related to your major, or something that you've just been motivated by throughout your life? While you are in country, then we'll work together to figure out how you can draw on your own experiences and the culture, the language, the political and religious aspects around you to come up with a really unique individual research project. So that's what we do at the HUA Project Center, again, working alongside the IQP students as well. We have videos about both of these opportunities on our website. You could get to that through the eProjects website. So spend a little bit more time looking around there. Email either one of us if you have any questions. We would love to work with you in Morocco.
Great, thanks a lot. And last but not least, so we have Namibia.
Thanks, Erin. Hi, everyone. So those are some pretty tough acts to follow. I now want to go to all of those locations to do projects. But I'm here to talk about Namibia. So Namibia is a really fascinating place to be. Well, to back up, my name is Joe Doran. I'm a faculty member in the Global School. I'm the co-director for the Namibia Project Center with Alex Smith. And we're taking over from longtime Namibia Project Center Director, Creighton Pete, who quite frankly, we're so fortunate to be following him because he established such a huge network of project sponsors and other contacts within the greater Windhoek area, but also all of Namibia, that we're able to really, we're set up for success to continue to create these rich project experience opportunities. The types of projects that our students have been doing in the past couple of years have really run the gamut and reflect kind of the diversity of the challenges that Namibia faces. So it's everything from doing, there was projects with the Namibian Rail parastatal organization to help increase passenger usage of the train system. There was a President's Award finalist team that tried to harmonize data from about 12 different non-governmental organizations on rural electrification programs, all the way through environmental education programs and robotics education programs. Really kind of runs the gamut, and I really urge you to take a look at some of the past projects to see just the quality and the rigor of the project experience. The housing situation and sort of the daily life opportunities within Namibia is that we have some really nice dorms that were recently built within the last 2 years that we occupy. You get to interact with students from Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and other sort of surrounding countries. We partner with the Namibian University of Science and Technology, which gives us some further opportunities to meet and interact with locals. Also, there are plenty of opportunities to travel and experience some of essentially, if you're watching a video of nature in Africa, there's a good chance that some of that footage has been shot in some of the national parks within Namibia. So we do an excursion to Etosha National Park, and people tend to travel on the weekends. Just kind of a plug about the interesting culture of Namibia. It's a place that's vast expanses and sparsely populated, yet has one of I believe it's the highest number of languages spoken per capita in the world. So you have tremendous linguistic diversity in a very and sort of a small population area. If you speak German, you can get around. There's a large German population. Afrikaans is spoken. English is the official language, although that's a very recent occurrence. And one of the ways that I describe Namibia to people that have never been is that it's a new country, and you feel like you're watching a culture and language emerge in real time. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to answer any questions, because I'm sure I left out some pretty key bits of information. So make sure I clarify anything for you. Thanks.
Thank you all. So before we dive into questions, I just want to remind the students on the call that if you have any general questions about the application process, you can reach out to our office at global@wpi.edu. You should have also received a second email this week from an application liaison, which is just a staff member in our office who's available and ready to chat if you have questions. This is a new thing that we're doing this year, essentially to keep our quote unquote door open as you're applying, since we know it is a little bit harder to go through the process when we are working virtually. So either way, if you never received that email, you can always just email Global and we can get you connected to the right person. So I see lots of questions in the chat. I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Deb, who can start asking our panelists.
Thanks, Erin, and thank you, directors. Our first question is directed towards Professor Baron. For the Israel site, are there any project components trying to bridge the political and cultural gap between Israelis and Palestinians? It's a huge issue, and the student would like to see progress towards a more respectful relationship between the two.
So we are actually located with a community that is very, very active in that area. They have years of experience in furthering understanding and cooperation between the different players. So you will experience some of that. Our projects are not in that direction. There are really no projects. Those projects, the staff at the Institute works very hard on these topics, but it really needs a lot of experience and know how to do that right. And so you'll experience some of it. You'll be able to actively contribute because you're going to meet these students that work there, that come to study there, that do internships there, but not as part of a project. Does that answer?
Thank you. While I have you, are there any language requirements for Israel?
So in both locations, so most people speak English. In both locations where we are living, there about 50% of the population are Anglos originally, either first or second generation. So there are people whose parents came from the States or South Africa or New Zealand, and they speak with their kids English. So there's a lot of English being spoken. However, there is a language prep requirement that will teach during B term, that will teach some basic reading, writing, some basic words, mostly so that when you go on the public bus, you get on the right bus. And that when you go and ask to go wherever, that you can communicate with people. And the feedback that I typically get is, I wished I had studied more Hebrew. So yes, there is some language prep as part of B term.
Thank you. For Professor Samase, what do people do in their free time in Cape Town?
Yes. So in Cape Town, our students do a variety of things. There's a good number of students who like to go to the waterfront like this. It's not very far from where the students live. It's a beautiful place to visit, a world-class restaurant, big shopping mall, historical sites, museums. So you can just walk from the Atlantic Point where our students live to go there. A lot of students also like to do hiking, so they can hike Table Mountain, they can hike Lion's Head, for example. And these are hikes that are close enough that they can just walk through it. It takes about 90 minutes to go up the Lion's Head Mountain. And from there, and from Table Mountain, you can get a beautiful view of the city. If you travel a little further, you can get to the Borders Beach, where you can see penguins and bring some of them back home if you're not allowed to do that. I'm just kidding. So you can see a lot of penguins. But I think a lot of our students end up doing a lot of cultural experiences, which is, food tasting, and also a lot of classes for cooking local food and meeting new people, shopping, art galleries, and all that. And eventually, some students also who are able to do so can do also, wine tasting if they are of the appropriate age. Something that we don't encourage normally, but that's something that we have seen students do in the past. And if you have more questions, I'll be available after the session for student question and answers. The link was posted on the first slide, but I don't know if you take notice of that.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, I forgot, you can also visit Nelson Mandela's prison cell, which is very notorious, right? Where Nelson Mandela was kept captive for a long period of time. So that's a place that you can also go and just for historical backgrounds. Thanks.
Our next question is also for Israel. How are students transported to the project sites from the living quarters in Israel?
By public transportation mostly, or there is a local public bus. Israel has very good public transportation. There is a local bus and a regional bus. You can take either one. And depending on the details, in some cases, we organize shuttle buses.
Thank you. My next question, Professor Doran, I know you already answered the question in the chat, but for our viewers on YouTube, I'm going to ask you the question again. Can you give us a more general picture about the projects that are done in Namibia?
Yeah, sure. So we tend to have as I said, there's a sort of a breadth of different projects that we end up doing. A lot of them have an emphasis on education. This is over the past 2 years in particular. Everything from environmental education to, as I said, robotics education. For example, we work a really strong project partner that we're definitely going to be working with into the future. Is called Physically Active Youth. It's a nonprofit that is in Katatora, which is a suburb of Windhoek. That is one of the legacies of the apartheid regime. And Physically Active Youth aims to try to change, not only to provide educational opportunity, but really change the sort of the dynamic by empowering youth to change their communities. And so we've done science education projects with them, as well as robotics education projects. And this robotics education project is something that's going to continue into the future. So we have education projects. We have had ones that kind of, I mentioned the Trans-Namib Railway project. We have data science for impact. We've had, because of working with an organization, it's a German organization. For those of you that don't know, Namibia is a former German colony. And so there's a lot of German nonprofit activity in Namibia, and we work with an organization called Hans Seidel. And Hans Seidel focuses on democracy and economic development. And so we actually did a project with them last year remotely. It was one of the few that we were still able to get done, that focused on aquaponics systems, and then creating educational, not only doing a prototype of a system, but then doing educational materials to help teach people about how to create their own aquaponic systems in the rural areas throughout Namibia. So I don't know if that's general enough, but they tend to we have a spectrum of projects, and in general, there's a big education focus, there's a big environmental focus. We're more than likely going to be having, I just need to get confirmation, water projects, again, that are going to be coming on board through some of our organizations in our network. And I feel like I'm blanking on a couple, but it's education, environment, and then different organizational types of consulting opportunities as well.
Thank you, Professor. The next question is for our Morocco directors. What do people usually do in their free time in Morocco?
Students don't have free time, do they? I'm kidding. It depends on if you want to stay in Rabat or if you would like to get outside of the city. This is certainly not the case only in Morocco. I'm sure many of our directors could talk about this as well. Many large cities in Morocco have two different parts of town. There's the Medina, or the old part of town, the traditional part of town, and there's the Ville Nouvelle, hence the French colonization, which is the newer parts of town. You would be living in the Ville Nouvelle. Professor Hamzawi mentioned that you're right across the street from a mall. You can take a tram, which is it's a great public transportation system in Rabat, certainly not across all of Morocco. You can take a tram from your dorm and in about 5 minutes be in the Medina, which was built about 1,000 years ago. So you can hang out in there, just kind of wandering around, sampling all of the foods, sitting in a coffee shop and drinking a ton of coffee or Moroccan tea, super sweet mint tea. A lot of our students take advantage of the fact that we are on the coast, and you can go surfing for about $10 US. That includes your board and your wetsuit. And then on the weekends, a lot of our students travel across Morocco. So Morocco has a train system that's fairly manageable, fairly cheap also. So you can travel anywhere from Marrakesh to Tangier to Fez, and check out what the different cities are like, and you will find a significant difference as you go across different parts of Morocco. You can hike. You can swim, you can explore different urban settings. So there's a lot of different things that you could do while you're there. And a lot of these places that I'm talking about are very reachable from a Friday afternoon to Sunday evening weekend trip.
Thank you, Professor. And while I have you, can I ask you the next question? What is the language situation for Morocco?
Super fascinating, I think. We've talked about the history of colonialism in Morocco. So you get lots of different language systems that kind of have clashed together to make a very, very unique form of Arabic called Darija, which is colloquial Moroccan Arabic. We don't have a language requirement for the Morocco Project Center. A lot of people in urban spaces will be able to speak enough English to help you get by. But we do encourage you to spend time in your PQP, and we have PQPs for both the IQP and the HUA project centers. Learning a little bit of Darija will teach you how to say hello, ask some common questions, negotiating the city, things like that. And then once you get in Morocco, we'll give you a little bit more time, depending on which project you're working on, IQP or HUA. We'll give you a little bit more training in Darija. Again, to just kind of help you get around, help you interact with people. A lot of the center directors here today have talked about how we don't want to go to different places assuming that life is going to be exactly the same. So we would love for you to learn enough Moroccan Arabic to interact with people, as opposed to assuming that they will always be able to speak English with you. The reality is that most places in Morocco, you'll be able to get around with a mashup of English and whatever French you learned in high school and whatever Arabic you're able to pick up. If you know Spanish, then that works in a lot of different parts of Morocco as well. So no requirements in terms of language. We will teach you a little bit of Darija, and then hope that you'll pick up more when you're there.
Thank you. The next question here is for Professor Kruger. What do people usually do in their free time in Ghana?
Shukran Baseth. Okay, so what do people do in their spare time? So that's a really good question. We're kind of, we can be spread out in one or two different communities, but what we do is we have organized trips for everybody, essentially every other weekend. So when you arrive in Morocco, when you arrive in Ghana, which you can fly through Morocco to get there. When you arrive in Ghana, you'll usually get in around between noon and 3 in the afternoon, and you'll come to a place, a hotel that we stay at on the beach. And we stay there for a couple of nights to get acclimated, to get used to West African food, even though it's sort of tourist style, but it gets your belly working. And then we take a bus to the places where we're going to be staying. And then the first weekend we stay in our village. And there's plenty to do during that. There's playing football, soccer with the kids. There's markets and things like that. Some students rented a van and went to the sort of the bigger market towns on the weekends to do some shopping. Other people later on went to Accra. But then after the first weekend that we're in the villages, we go on another trip. So I think we go to the Cape Coast first, which is where the slave castles are, and a nature park that we visit. And then we go back, and then we spend the next weekend in the villages. And then the next weekend we go to Mole National Park, which is in the far north of Ghana. And we stay in a hotel there and go on wildlife viewing, safaris and walks and things like that. And then the second to the last weekend, we go to the monkey sanctuary in Tafi, which is on the border of Togo. As I said, students have gone into Accra. They've arranged their own transportation into Accra. Usually it's vetted by me, and they stayed at Airbnbs. It's very inexpensive to do that. But I think what you want to do when you come to Ghana is you do want to spend as many of those weekends as you can in the villages, because you get such a different experience, such a different pace of life. You can have the opportunity to make really deep connections with the people that you're working alongside. They'll invite you over for dinner. They'll invite you to the local chop bar. You can ask me what that is offline. But I also want to point you to, if you want more images and stories about what we've been doing in Ghana, go to www.development design lab. And on that, you will see our philosophy, our past fellows, our past projects, some photos, our local collaborators with some bios of them, a video that one of the students made last year is posted on that site. And so I'd invite you to go look at those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Kruger. That's it for the questions for today. Thank you all.
Great. Well, this is our last one. And we really appreciate the time that directors have taken out to offer a second glance at your project centers. For students, I encourage you to go back to eProjects, look at these centers again. If there's other questions you can that you have, you can reach out to our office or to the center directors directly. And we wish you good luck in the application process. And thank you again to the directors. Have a good afternoon, everybody.